In Japanese, we don't use second-person pronouns like anata very often. For example, if you go to a bar and want to talk to a purple-haired stranger, you can say something like, Yoku kimasu ka? Do you come here often? And yoku means often. Kimasu, to come. Ka is a question particle. So yoku kimasu ka doesn't have any pronouns. But some English speakers have trouble with this kind of sentence structure because English is a very pronoun-heavy language that uses pronouns like Super Mario collecting coins. So in this video, I'm going to give you practical tips to speak Japanese the Japanese way without using anata excessively so that you won't sound like Google Translate. And the first important point is that Japanese speakers are not trying hard to avoid using you. We simply don't think about pronouns. Like when we say, Yoku kimasu ka? Do you come here often? We are not thinking about, oh, what pronoun should I use? Anata, onesan, big sister, or nothing at all? We're not thinking about that because this idea of pronoun is absent in the first place. So if you want to speak this way, you have to change the way you approach this. So what should you do? Here's the most important tip of this video. Start with the main idea or the main word. For example, with yoku kimasu ka, the main word, the main idea might be yoku, often. So we start with yoku and we continue with kimasu, to come. So it's gonna be yoku kimasu, to come often. And this is a core phrase. And ka is just optional. You don't really have to use it. So you can just say to the purple-haired stranger, Yoku kimasu? Do you come here often? And this is enough. Japanese is a very contextual language, and yoku kimasu is perfectly correct, natural, and complete. Did you notice that in the process of making this sentence, yoku kimasu, we didn't think about pronouns at all. So that's how you construct a Japanese sentence. Find the main idea, main word, main phrase, and start with it. I mean, life is about priorities. You have homework, but you also want to watch TikTok. So what's the most important thing here? Well, the important thing is obviously to subscribe to my email group because I help you acquire natural and practical Japanese so that you can communicate with real-life Japanese people when you come to Japan or enjoy watching intellectually sophisticated anime without subtitles. So click on the link in the description and subscribe to my email group. Now, English speakers often have a bias when it comes to sentences like yoku kimasu because in English you might say something like, do you come here often? This is the complete version. And in a casual conversation, you can just say, you come here often, or maybe even come here often, and it can be understood. But if I say, come here often in English, you might feel like this is an incomplete sentence. Like this is a shortened version of, do you come here often? But Japanese is a very different language. Yoku kimasu ka is already a complete sentence. This is not a shortened version of anything. Nothing has been omitted grammatically. This is also different from languages like Spanish. If you say, ¿Quieres comer? Do you want to eat? ¿Quieres, you want, is a verb, and comer is a verb. So there's no pronouns, but ¿quieres already implies the pronoun tu, you. But the Japanese verb, kimasu, does not imply any pronouns. So this is an important perspective to speak Japanese. I can say pronouns in Japanese function like training wheels for English speakers. I mean, a bike without training wheels is not an incomplete bike. Like, a bike doesn't imply training wheels, just like kimasu ka doesn't imply any pronouns. Now let's try another example, and this is actually a real story. So many years ago, I went to Okinawa, and I went to this resto bar by myself, and I sat at the counter. And there was a woman sitting next to me, and all of a sudden, she asked me what I was drinking. So what do you think she said in Japanese? So let's start with the main idea. What was the thing she wanted to ask? Well, obviously she wanted to ask me if I was single because of my strong masculine energy. Okay, she wanted to ask what I was drinking. So we're gonna start with what? Nani. And after nani, you can add nonderu, drinking, which is a contraction of nondeiru, drinking. And since she's reacting to what I was doing, I would use the expression desu. And I'm gonna add ka. So she said, Nani nonderu desu ka? What are you drinking? And I was actually pleasantly surprised because talking to a stranger like this is extremely uncommon in Tokyo. It almost never happens. This was one of those moments when I realized that people are much friendlier outside Metro Tokyo. But anyway, I hope you can see how we didn't think about pronouns. Next situation. Let's say a random washed up actress drops a piece of chocolate. You pick it up, walk up to her, and what would you say? Here, we're gonna focus on the fact that she dropped it. So, 落としました. So you can say, すいません、落としましたよ. Excuse me, you dropped this. すいません is just a contraction of すみません. And I also used yo, which we often use to tell somebody something that they don't know. So, すいません、落としましたよ. And we can focus on a different thing. For example, we can focus on これ, this. And you can say, すいません、これ落としましたよ. Excuse me, you dropped this. And actually, you can just say, すいません、これ, and stop there, which is pretty common in daily conversation. In Japanese, you don't always have to finish your sentence. You only have to when you have to. What about yo? Particularly for people whose name you don't know. For example, excuse me, is this your umbrella? Would it be すみません、あなたの傘ですか? Okay, let's think of a situation because context really matters. So let's say you are at a library and it's raining outside. You see a green-haired girl leaving, and you also see an empty seat with an umbrella on the table. So you think it's hers. You grab the umbrella, and what would you say to her? And what's the main word here? Maybe your English instinct tells you yours, but the Japanese brain might say forgot, 忘れた. So you can use this word and say, すいません、これ忘れてませんか? Excuse me, did you forget this by any chance? And here we focused on 忘れてる, being forgotten. But you can also focus on words like これ, this, and just think this is an umbrella. Use your imagination. But you can start with これ and say これ違いますか? Is this the wrong item? And 違う, to differ, is a very useful word. You can use it in a situation like this. 違います, it's not mine. Or you can use it to deny what somebody says like this.
待ってください。俺は化け物かもしれませんが、こいつは関係ありません。です。構うってことはやっぱり仲間だ。違う。
And also, in this situation, you can also say, すいません、これ, excuse me, this, and stop there, and they will understand, and it's pretty natural. How would you go about addressing a member of an audience, assuming you don't know their name? So imagine you are a motivational speaker and giving a TED talk. Now it's a question time. People raise their hand, and you want to say, okay, that lady over there. You can say something like, そこの女性の方, that woman over there. Or describe what they're wearing and say, そこの白い T シャツの方, the person with the white T-shirt over there. Or, そこの売れない女優の方, that unpopular actress over there. Because you are totally not mean. So this is not that different from English. And now they're asking you a question and you want to say, so what do you think? Reverting back the question. Here, what we want to know is the thinking part, like what they think. And in Japanese, it's gonna be どう思う, what they think. So you can ask them, どう思いますか? What do you think? But here, if you really want to emphasize you, I think this is one of the situations where you can actually use あなた and sound natural. So you can say, あなたはどう思いますか? What do you think? And I think it sounds okay in this kind of situation because you are the speaker, so you are kind of like an authority. And you're talking to this person in a context of kind of like a semi-formal debate or discussion. So in this kind of situation, I think using あなた doesn't sound so weird. If I were talking about something other than you, for example, my dog is cute, but then I want to talk about you, for example, but you're cuter. Should you use あなた? Okay, so you're walking your dog, and the green-haired girl approaches you and say, かわいいですね. The dog is cute. And then you look at her and think, oh, she's cute too. So what would you say? And what's the main idea here? Well, that is かわいい, cute. So you look at her, maybe do some little gesture and say, かわいいですね. She will understand that you're talking about her and runs away because she doesn't like it when a handsome guy tries to seduce her with his handsome smile. Here, you can also use お姉さん, which literally means big sister, but we sometimes use it to talk to a woman. So you can say, お姉さんも可愛いですね. You're cute too. And with guys, you can use お兄さん, big brother. And I wouldn't use あなた in this kind of flirtatious conversation because it just doesn't have the right vibe. I wish you'd talk about using the person's name instead of あなた. How does that come across? So using somebody's name is very common and completely natural. For example, if you want to say, is this your smartphone? You can say, これ、かなちゃんのスマホ? Is this your smartphone, かなちゃん? Or you can simply say, これ、かなちゃんの? Is this yours? And you can also use the exact same phrase to talk about かなちゃん as a third person. So I can talk to somebody else and say, これ、かなちゃんのスマホ? Is this かなちゃん's smartphone? And that works perfectly fine. What if you don't know their name? If you don't know, you can always not use anything. Just like the other example with 違う to differ. With the smartphone, you can just say, これ違いますか? Is this the wrong smartphone? And she will understand. Or if this is like a flirtatious conversation, you can always ask her name. You can say, 何さんですか? What are you called? Which is a very native-like phrasing. But you can also use a more beginner-friendly phrase like, お名前は? What's your name? And that's fine too. And if she says, マオマオです. I'm Mao Mao. You can say, マオマオさんも可愛いですね. You're cute too, Mao Mao-san. And asking for somebody's name is a very good idea if you want to flirt with them. So ask for their name, use it in the conversation, and don't be like a certain noble guy who refuses to call his crush by her name. If I'm talking to a stranger and I want to say, how would you do this? How do I say you? Okay, let's contextualize this. You go to Uniqlo and try to use a self-service checkout machine, but you don't know how to use it. So you want to ask a purple-haired staff member. Now, what's the main idea here? The main idea is どうやって how, and you continue with 使う to use. So you can say どうやって使うんですか? How do you use this? And that works perfectly. But here's an interesting thing here. In the English version, how do you use this? You're using you as kind of like a general people. You're not really talking about a specific person. And this is a very English way of phrasing this. We don't do this in Japanese. In fact, with this sentence, どうやって使うんですか? How do you use this? There's no hidden pronouns. Even if you try hard to use a pronoun here in Japanese, there's nothing you can do without sounding weird. あなた, you, doesn't fit. 私, I, doesn't fit. And 私たち, we, doesn't fit either. And think of this from a perspective of a Japanese person learning English. For us, this way of using you in English isn't obvious at all. If you listen to Japanese people who speak English just a little bit, they don't use this kind of construction because it doesn't exist in Japanese. So this is something we have to get used to. So I think this is pretty interesting because for you guys, English speakers, not using you isn't always obvious. But for us Japanese people, using you isn't always obvious. Yeah, right. They're always telling us that you don't use あなた. And then you watch casual conversation in Japanese films, people saying あなた and お前 all the time. Okay, newsflash. The way people speak Japanese in dramas and films are often a little bit different from the way we speak Japanese in real life. In fact, as a kid growing up in Japan, I'd always wondered, why don't people speak Japanese naturally in Japanese dramas? And that kind of experience as a kid actually made me very passionate about teaching you the way we actually speak Japanese in real life. There's actually a Japanese drama called Rebooting, and I watched the Netflix trailer. I was like, wow, people speak Japanese very naturally in this drama. And I ended up watching the entire show, which was pretty good, so I recommend it. But having said this doesn't mean nobody says you, あなた, お前, or some other variations in any situations. Some people use あなた in some situations, even though I virtually never use it. Some people, some situations, blah blah blah. Bro, I've been hearing this longer than the Japanese language exists. is there actually a good video that explains where it can be used? So I actually made a video 3 years ago that does just that. I included real-life examples of people using anata. So check it out. When I want to say, you guys all look handsome, but you are especially handsome, how would I do it? Okay, so let's say you're talking to your friend who was on a reality TV show. You want to say something like, everybody in that show is handsome, but you are the most handsome guy. What would you say it? So what's the main idea? The main idea is the most handsome guy. So it's gonna be like, 一番かっこいい, most handsome. So you can tell him, みんなかっこいいけど、一番かっこいいね. Everybody is handsome, but you're the most handsome one. This is much easier if you actually picture yourself talking to this person and this person is in front of you. If you say, 一番かっこいいね, you're the most handsome one, he will understand you're talking about him. And you can also use his name, Aqua, and say, みんなかっこいいけど、Aqua が一番かっこいいね. Everybody is handsome, but you're the most handsome one, Aqua. So you can say that and cry in another guy's apartment because this phrase doesn't always get you the kind of boyfriend you want. There is a bag on the bench at the station. You see a guy over there? How are you going to ask him if it's his bag? So what's our focus here? I would say it's あそこのカバン, the bag over there. And here the word 違う to differ can be useful. So I would tell this guy, すいません、あそこのカバンって違いますか? Excuse me, that bag over there, is that yours? But since I started with words like あそこ over there and カバン, I can make different sentences using these words. I can say, すいません、あそこにカバンって置きましたか? Excuse me, did you put the bag over there by any chance? Or I can even ask, すいません、あそこのカバンって誰のかわかりますか? Excuse me, do you know whose bag that is? And if you remember, you don't always have to finish your sentence. You can say something like, すいません、あそこのカバンって Excuse me, that bag over there? And he will understand what you're talking about. Of course, you can also use words like お兄さん, big brother, and say, すいません、あそこのカバンってお兄さんのですか? Excuse me, is that bag over there yours? But knowing how to ask this kind of question without using pronouns or some equivalents can be helpful to train your brain the Japanese way. Speaking Japanese isn't always about what you say. It's also about what you make the other person say in their head, like Inception. I never understood why you would use older brother or sister to refer to complete strangers because it sounded too informal or too personal, as we only use this to refer to our actual family members. Yeah, so this is about calling strangers お兄さん, big brother, or お姉さん, big sister. And I don't think this is hard to understand for English speakers because, well, have you ever heard somebody use the word bro? I don't really care, to be honest. Even if it's culturally inaccurate, I will keep saying anata until the day I die and no one can stop me. Of course, you can always say, well, my Japanese is already good enough, so I want to stop learning and go ahead and find out if my Bumble date is a catfish. And that's valid. If it works for you, it works for you. And thank you for watching this video even though you're not going to use this information. But what's good enough for you might not be good enough for other people. And if you want to improve your Japanese, I will teach you the kind of Japanese that real-life Japanese people today actually speak naturally and in a practical way, unlike unnatural and socially awkward AI Japanese or Minna no Nihongo Japanese. So click on the link and subscribe to my email group, Japanese with Yuta.